Hello and welcome back to Nadya's Identity Files. I'm super excited to have my second ever Skype call-in interview experience, and with none other than Moses Uver. And please correct me if I'm butchering your name. Like, you can just cuss me out right here on air if I'm totally fucking up your name. Like, it's all good. So, in just a second, his face is going to be right beside mine, and it's going to be glorious. Moses, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, and please tell me if I'm butchering your name.
No, Moses Uver is how.
Uver. Okay.
Yeah,
I kept going back and forth in I was like, okay, is it Uver? Is it Uvere? Is it Uver? I was just going through all of these different options. Well, it's wonderful.
It's actually pronounced Uvere, but I felt like that was really. Anyways, my parents were just saying, hey, let's just say it to where Americans can say it well, so I just say Uver. But it's actually a French name. But my family's from Nigeria, so.
Right. Yeah, that's why I think I went the Ver direction, because I have some background in French, and I was like, this sounds like there might be some French origins. Anyway, very cool. We got that part of your identity out of the way with your name. So good to have you on the air with me. Thank you for doing this. I'm excited to talk to you about different aspects of your identity, but especially with regard to your faith and how you have connected your faith to your art and to your music and to your work as a TV host. So you consider yourself a faith-based rapper, right? And you also, like I said, you are a TV host. You've worked with networks like TBN and other networks as well. Would you mind sharing a little bit of your story and how you've ended up in this field?
Yeah, I'm a kid from Dallas, Texas, and I just had dreams like every other kid to do something great, to change the world, to impact people. But my faith really informed the direction of my purpose and where I would want to go. So initially, rap and entertainment started as just something really, really cool to do because there's people I looked up to that rapped. I grew up in an area where I lived part of my life in a little bit of struggle, a little bit of poverty. And in those places, I met guys that rapped and that did music, and they were brilliant at it, and it inspired me. And I really wanted to be connected to them because they had everything that looked cool. They had nice cars, they had a chain, they had this good looking girls. I was like, yo, this is who I want to be like. So I started rapping to just connect with them. But then I just fell in love with the art, and I fell in love with writing. I fell in love with poetry. I fell in love with rhythm. And so I just did it as a hobby, just like any other kid, just to have fun and just to hang out with my friends. And then I had a life change occur, and that really led me to giving my life to God and committing to serving Him. And so for a while, I didn't do the rap thing because I didn't know if that really fit in, my new journey into being more God-centered. Mm-hmm. And so I wrestled with it for a while, and then I finally said, okay, I started understanding more of what my purpose was, and my purpose was centered around the art. It was centered around making art and empowering people with it. So I went for it, and I really saw that God blessed it. And so from there, I ended up rapping on TV, and they gave me a job as a TV host.
So tell me a little bit about this life change. What did that entail, and what impact did that have on your identity?
So, that's a great question. So basically, I was a kid I was 18 years old, just graduated high school. I got offered an academic scholarship to go to a junior college, and I had no idea, what most kids are. I had no idea what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, or anything. And so I was being asked to be thinking about those things at my age, and I didn't know what I wanted. And so I enrolled in the junior college, taking the academic scholarship, and I decided my initial thing was I was going to be a dentist because I wanted to make gold grills because I always wanted a gold grill. And so that's just what was my first ambition. Okay, I'm just going to make gold grills for the rest of my life because I thought that was going to be cool.
Be 100 and making gold grills.
Yeah, it was, and I still low-key want to make them.
Do it.
Anyway. I went to college and realized I didn't want to do that. Realized I didn't like doing that, but I still love the art. And so I always heard about God. I went to church, like every other kid in the South does. I went to church every Sunday because it's something you do down here in Texas. You eat, you sleep, go to church. You just do that in Texas. And so I didn't really know that God was real. It's just an activity that I was part of. So this was my first time saying, okay, God, if you're real, show me. And so I went to church like I always do. And at that point, I was able to make my decision if I wanted to go to church or not. And I went partially because I wanted to see if God would do something. But then there was this girl that I liked who went to church. And I tell everybody this, low key, the best looking girls go to church. And I put that on my wife that I married right now, So I was going to church to partially try to talk to this girl and partially try to see if God would show me something. So I went there open, and I was overwhelmed with these emotions, and I'd never been exposed to them before. Very tender moments in my heart that I've experienced growing up. And then I was met with this moment of peace while I was praying. And that was the first time that I ever registered, okay, something happened to me that I can't really fully explain, but I know that this was bigger than me. And I just attested that to this was God showing up and meeting me when I asked him to show up. And so from there, I dropped out of college, and then I went to Bible school to just learn more about God. So I got a degree in theology, which is just the study of God thoughts. That's what theology is. And so went to Bible school, got a degree there. And that's what kind of spurred me doing this music thing, because while I was in college, I met all these other musicians and other artists that loved God and wanted to do something for him. And I was really moved by it because I never met anyone like that before. I've never met kids that really cared about God like that. So they were really inspiring me. So being in that culture inspired me to really center everything that I do around that. And that moment of just being met with peace was really interesting to me. And from there, I've just been on this journey of pursuing and trying to know God. And I use the music as a platform to open up conversation with people about it.
Right. So at this time, when you were kind of coming into this, I guess, self-realization and creating a deeper connection with God and with your faith, were you still working on your music? Or had you kind of set that to the side to allow for this new, trajectory to unfold for you?
So it was kind of like a both and. So I was doing both. I was working on music and hanging out with a bunch of guys that were all driven by their faith to create content and create art. And so I was hanging out with those guys while in pursuit of understanding my faith and understanding what it is to believe in things you can't see and to pray, because I was a very rational thinker at the time. As I got introduced to God, it really changed my thinking, and it really exposed my thinking to thinking more abstract and into thinking in more, thinking with more optimism. And that was new for me because I came from a place where it was very, very black and white. How I was raised was very, very black and white. But as I started understanding God more, it really introduced these ideas that were really, really abstract, and I had to believe in something I couldn't see, which was really hard.
Yeah.
But the challenge of that was, in the process of that, is what I've grown to really love. So I apply that process in my music. So as I'm writing songs, I think about the endpoint a lot, but I'm really enjoying just writing the bars and putting words together and telling a story and finding a punchline. And so so when I think about my faith, it really couples together with how I write songs and how I display my art as well. They're kind of like both and type of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. But so even still, you obviously are a self-described aspirational hip-hop artist, which I think is fantastic. And clearly this is a huge part of your identity. But you often tour with mainstream artists, mainstream hip-hop artists who, obviously that's not a component of their music at all. In fact, some people would say is the direct opposite of your faith-based music. So do you ever feel some conflict there, or do you ever feel some resistance from them? Like, what is that like?
So I think in the artist world, when it comes to your lane and what you're trying to communicate, I think everyone can respect good quality art. If it's good, people will listen to it. It's really just that simple. And so I really took an emphasis and a pride on really crafting good songs and really performing the songs well. Those are the two things that I love to do, and those are the two things I put a lot of effort in. And so I think that's what opened up doors for me to do shows with guys that are more on the mainstream side of things, because they heard me having these ideas about God, but they couldn't deny that it was good and that it was really, really solid. And from there, it really furthered a lot of relationships with me, because that's how the industry is. If it's good, people want to be your friend. If it's not good, people don't want to be around you.
Yeah.
So I made a lot of friends from that too. So as people got to know me, I think they even appreciated my art even further as they got to know me. So I never really met a whole lot of tension. I think I met more tension on the business side of things than I have with artist to artist when it comes to my faith and someone else's faith, because faith is not really a component for most people when they do business.
Yeah.
For me, it is. So I try to be really careful with the way I do things because I want to maintain my integrity. But a lot of people in business don't care about their integrity. And
can you give me an example of where that's happened?
So one that I told my homies recently was I worked with this bar in the city. I won't disclose their name.
Put them on blast. No.
And they brought me out to perform. And initially we brought a lot of people to the establishment. We brought like well over 100 people, made them a ton of money. And the guy told me he was a believer of faith and of God and Jesus, but I don't know. I don't know. His life didn't really measure up to it. But anyways, he brought me out there, and he kept bringing me out and asking me to come, and we kept bringing tons and tons of listeners and tons of viewers and fans out to his establishment. So long story short, the way he structured the payments was different for me being a faith believer as it was for someone else being just like a mainstream regular band or whatever. And it really pissed me off, honestly, because we brought more people out than some of these other people, but we just didn't get the respect because we carried the marquee of Christian with what we did. And it really pissed me off, because at the end of the day, we established market value. I mean, and there were numbers there, and they didn't see that because there was a little bit of bias there towards Christians for whatever the reason, which it's obviously personal, but he didn't really disclose that. But that's one example of many times that's happened, where some people just tried to harm me and be deceitful in business because of the Christian banner.
It almost sounds like a form of exploitation on their end, like basically insinuating, well, you're this faith-based person, you're Christian, you should just want to give and give and give without actually, having anything to come back your way that's reciprocal. And, sometimes I experience that because, I consider myself someone who's very based in social impact and making a difference, and people know that. So they will oftentimes try and bleed me to death, it feels, because I know I'm such a giving person. And it's like, how do you strike a balance between holding up your faith and your integrity and who you are, your code of ethics, and not getting yourself screwed, right? So
and here's what's real about that is it isn't just in the bars and in the music venues. It's kind of like that in the church too, which has been a little bit disparaging and sad, but it's like that everywhere. When people notice givers, they want to take from them. And a quote that one of my good friends told me growing up was like, you want to be in a relationship. There's only two types of people in the world. There's givers and receivers. You want to be in a relationship with givers. And And I realize that it's so simple, but I realize it's very, very true and reigns true in so many areas of my life. And what I try to do is really position myself in a place of empathy. Okay, why are they trying to take from me right now? Oh, it's because of this and this and this. And it doesn't make it right what they're doing, but it gives me a little bit of compassion to push through the BS instead of
having resentment.
Yes, or throwing them in a trash can, whatever.
Right. Yeah. True. That's really, really great point, because I think when we do step into that place of empathy, or at least, reflection, it makes it less damaging for our own souls. It's less soul crushing as well.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
It's an ugly monster that can creep in, like, if you let that bear root in your life. And so I've had it happen, so that's why I fight against it, and I still have to fight against it. Even like with that instance with the guy, like, who was booking me a ton of times at that venue. I mean, he tried to book me again, and I was just like, I still said no. I was like, no, I'm not going. Yeah. And so that's kind of part of it too, is realizing that I can say no and be okay with it, and not feel like I'm being an asshole. Like, I'm really just saying no because you're hurting me, and I don't want to be hurt.
Right.
And it's not that I don't care or have empathy for your situation. You got to make money, your business. So anyways, it's like balancing all of that too. And I think about all of that because I really take pride in like my character. I really just want to form my character into a man of like legacy, kind of like Martin Luther King. Like, I mean, he made a lot of mistakes, like a ton of mistakes. I mean, a ton of mistakes. But he could still die, and he was still able to die as a man of integrity and character. And that's kind of who I look up to.
Well, yeah, I think hopefully everybody looks up to Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah. I hope. People who don't, that's a story for another day. So I keep plugging the word aspirational, and I think it's because, obviously you practice Christianity, but I think it's really interesting that you choose that word rather than Christian, because it's kind of a different identifier. And I think what's also interesting is I feel like you're so in line with your identity and your relationship with God that you don't feel a need to necessarily press on with that label in your business life. And so can you tell me about why you chose to say you're aspirational versus a Christian artist?
I think the premise is because I want to reach more people. And I feel like what I'm doing and what my team is doing and what my city is doing, I feel like it's really important. And I've noticed in the years that when I have carried the banner of Christian, that it's really limited to me to only interfacing and dealing with people that are like me, that already believe, that already bought in, that already get it. And I get joy out of being able to interface and connect with people that are in the same mind frame and space, but the real work is outside of the Christian box. And so that's just through experience of just realizing, like, man, there's not enough people who understand how awesome this is, and I want to get people to understand how awesome this is. So that's why I've made the choice to not necessarily sit in the box of labels, because it just limits you. But at the same time, if people hear me and say, oh, this is just aspirational and this is just makes me feel good, I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, if people say, oh, this is Christian, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to the label at all.
Right.
I just want to be able to communicate that this isn't just for this is for everybody.
You're trying to be more encompassing. You're trying to reach as many people as possible, and I think that is super special, because a lot of Christians, and I think I mentioned this to you briefly when we first spoke, that I've met, it's almost as though like they want to keep everything just within their circle of other Christians, or maybe even feel like people that don't identify as Christian don't deserve to hear these messages.
Right. And I speak on behalf of the culture that I am in, that I want to humbly say I'm sorry to any and everyone that might be hearing this. or that I might have been hurt or affected by that, because we all are just broken people at the end of the day. And everyone wants to take pride in something. I mean, there's people here in our city that really take pride in me just working so hard to inspire people to change the world. So they'll just run and just yell as loud as you can, like, man, Moses is awesome. But when I make a mistake, it's like earth shattering to them. And I have to, and the point of that is to help people realize that it is not like we are just all people trying to figure this thing out. So I wish that everyone was a little bit more grace-filled and dealt with people with a little bit more kindness. But there are people that don't, because they're very gung-ho and they're proud, and that's still good too. You still need a measure of that. But on behalf of the community, I really want to say sorry to everyone that's been hurt and been affected, because it does suck. Because I've been on the tail end of that too. I've had people tell me, "Oh, we don't. You're a rapper. Like, we don't accept Christian rap, quote unquote, here in our church. Like, that's the devil's stuff." I mean, I've heard those kind of things before too. So I'm on the grunt of that as well. But and yeah, I get. Again, I'm a little bit more empathetic than most people. I mean, I think that's why I'm in the position I am in, because I carry the burden and understand people a little bit further than most, and so I get it, but it sucks, and I'm sorry. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I mean, obviously, we need more people like you out there. So please find them and make them. I think the more that you're spreading your message with your music and your hosting, hopefully others in turn will be inspired to do similar work, and we can see a larger change in that realm.
That is what I've given my life to. That's the sacrifice I've made, is to hope that my legacy will breed more people. I feel like I'm kind of like a product of Martin Luther King, like him doing his thing. Like, it has inspired me so much to 100% dedicate my life. So I'm hoping that other people will see my life and the way I love people, and really get passionate and really start changing their culture.
I hope so as well. Well, thank you, Moses, so much for your time and for this interview. We're going to take a brief break, everybody, and then we're going to bring back Kitty and have an interview with her and chat with her about what faith means in her world of TV hosting and entertainment. And then we're going to do a round table. So, Moses, you can stick around with us, hang out on Skype, and then we're just going to chat with you and just kind of have a conversation. And it's going to be pretty cool. We've never done a round table with Skype before, so that's going to be interesting.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, everyone.